Welcome to Doctors in the House. My name is Dr. Terrence Baker, your host. Tonight we're going to talk about a topic that's in the news, the Omicron surge. It's causing a lot of concern, a lot of anxiety and fear throughout the nation, really around the world. It's important to take the Omicron surge seriously, but it offers opportunities, and we're going to talk about some of those opportunities tonight as we move forward. The first thing to remember about the surge is that vaccination provides protection from serious disease with Omicron and with the Delta virus that is still commonly being seen in communities around the world. The Omicron virus is very contagious. It has been said to be perhaps 500 times more contagious, more infectious than the Wuhan virus where this pandemic began. Even though it's more contagious, what we've been seeing is that it does not appear to be more dangerous. It does spread rapidly, and whenever the Omicron particle comes into a community, the surge of infection to both vaccinated and unvaccinated patients is high. In South Africa, on the 14th of December, over 21,000 new infections were seen that day. In London, England, it is expected that Omicron will become the primary virus mutant present within England by the end of the month. And so it's fair to say that Omicron is very infectious and it spreads very easily. The good news out of all this is that the infections appear to be mild, appear to be to affect both vaccinated and unvaccinated patients, and the number of deaths that have occurred so far has been reduced. It's important to know that there are no political solutions, in my opinion, to the Omicron spread. That is, the Omicron is spreading so rapidly once it enters a community that closing borders, shutting down airlines, closing theaters, closing restaurants, churches, and other establishments, stopping travel for the holiday will not stop the Omicron from surging and spreading. In my opinion, there are no political solutions to the Omicron spread. It's true that unvaccinated adults are at higher risk for more serious disease, and vaccinated adults can expect the Omicron infection to only cause cough, cold, runny nose, and upper respiratory tract symptoms lasting in general 3 to 5 days. Unvaccinated patients can expect more serious symptoms of cough, cold, body aches, fever, chills, sore throat, respiratory symptoms, and can be hospitalized and may require more serious interventions. And it's possible that unvaccinated patients who are immunocompromised may even die from the Omicron, although the death rate from Omicron at this point has been low. Now, one of the opportunities to Omicron is that it provides an opportunity for everyone who has not gotten vaccinated to take a look at the facts of why they have decided not to vaccinate. Some of my patients I know have decided not to vaccinate, but it's political, it's out of frustration, it's out of anger. But what I would encourage you tonight is to take a look at the facts and make a decision based on facts as to whether you will take the vaccination or not. There's still time for those of you that are unvaccinated. There's still time for you to get vaccinated before the surge arrives in your communities. Before the Omicron surge is fully arrived, it is possible for you to get vaccinated. and to provide some protection against the virus and the serious symptoms that even Omicron can cause in the unvaccinated. In my patients in the Baltimore-Washington area, I have been encouraging them and suggesting that it's extremely urgent this weekend and the beginning of next week, Christmas week, to get vaccinated. It could be the greatest gift that you give yourself. The power of the vaccines must not be underestimated. The power of the vaccines is that it's not that they stop you from getting sick, it's just that they seem to prevent you from developing more serious illness, hospitalizations, ventilator needs, and admissions to the intensive care unit. Also, there's an added value to the Omicron that's just evolving. That is vaccination, 1, 2, or 3 doses, plus Omicron infection appears to provide super immunity. That is a strong defense against future infections. And this thinking is just evolving now as doctors are learning more and more about how Omicron infections and vaccinated breakthrough cases seems to affect the patient. And the answer is that vaccination plus Omicron leads to a high level of protection and immunity. The next is that the vulnerable still needs protection during this period of time from Omicron. And so that brings us up to the steps that each of us can take as we move forward and the opportunities to move forward in this pandemic where Omicron is the newest threat. Number one is it's important that we declare war on the virus itself and not on each other. There is too much fighting. Families, family members, some vaccinated, others not. Politicians recommending vaccination and other politicians recommending that you don't get vaccinated or that it's your personal choice. And so the path forward is a path that involves a number of opportunities and a number of steps. The first step is do not be fearful. There is no reason for fear. Stop being fearful and realize that you have decisions to make and opportunities to do the right thing for you and your family. Educate yourself. Take the Omicron as an opportunity to educate yourself by learning as much about the Omicron as you can, talking to your doctors, reviewing the news, and in general, just learning as much as you can about the pandemic and the decisions that you need to make concerning vaccination if you haven't vaccinated or you haven't taken your booster. Next, realize that vaccine and the booster are part of laying a foundation of your body's defense against this virus, Omicron, as well as future variants that come along. The vaccine doesn't stop you from getting sick at all, but what it does do is it prevents serious sickness, hospitalizations, the need for intubation, the need for ICU, and even death is greatly reduced in patients who take the vaccine and the booster if you're eligible. It's important to know that the vaccine is the foundational step necessary to protect yourself and your family from developing this disease. Next, if you do get sick with a cough, cold, runny nose, sore throat, laryngitis, pharyngitis, sore throat, fever, chills, you need to test yourself. You can either use a rapid test readily available or the PCR test, but it's important to know that the respiratory illness you have, is it coming from Omicron or is it coming from a winter cold? The two act a lot alike, and it's difficult to know just based on symptoms. So the rapid test will provide a way for us to know. Of course, if you're positive, you're going to quarantine. If you're negative, then you'll treat yourself for a winter cold. It's important to accept that Omicron and other variants are going to be with us for a long time. It's likely that the virus will become endemic, that is a regular part of our lives, and that we will learn to live with it as we go forward. Opening our schools for our children to continue their education is an important opportunity presented by Omicron. Children that are sick can be rapidly tested, and the ones that are positive for Omicron and other variants of SARS-CoV-2 can be sent home for a 5 to 7 day quarantine. Children that have common coughs and colds and runny noses can be treated by their pediatrician and family doctors, and the rest of the children can remain in school and continue their education, which is so important. Omicron presents an opportunity to open all businesses. Patients and visitors, clients can attend concerts, ballets, orchestras, church, restaurants, bars, grills, and other places where humanity comes together to celebrate life. Opening businesses is an important opportunity presented by the Omicron virus, and patients who are vaccinated and who use N95 masks while visiting these businesses can do so safely and without excessive risk. Understand that the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic will continue for a while. It's important to recognize that vaccinating our children who can stay in school, protecting the teachers, protecting other students, protecting their parents and their grandparents is an important part of the road forward. It also maximizes herd immunity and allows the community to open safely. Compromise is an important part of the pandemic at this time, where unvaccinated patients who have had the virus should be allowed to prove their immunity and should be able to certify that their immunity in fact is protecting them, and every 6 months to recheck their immune globulin levels to assess for continued protection. This is no different than the system we use for freshmen in universities, where university freshman students prove their immunity against polio, measles, mumps, rubella. The same type of system should be available for patients who have been sick with the illness, have recovered, believe that they have adequate immunity, do not require the vaccination, and should have the opportunity to document that immunity. Finally, it's important to ventilate the space that you live in or work in, provide a filtration system that can filter your air and remove the particles. It's important to realize there's things you can do to supplement your own immunity, such as speaking with your primary care physician about using vitamin D3 and zinc. It's also important to recognize that monoclonal antibodies can provide important defense and protection against serious illness in SARS-CoV-2 when you do become infected, whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated. I would encourage you to look for and use monoclonal antibodies as part of recovery from sickness. And finally, it's important to realize that this pandemic is worldwide. All the nations of the world are suffering and have experienced tremendous economical loss, loss of life, loss of natural resources, loss of finances, loss of national integrity. It is important that the nations of this world pull together through either the UN, the World Health Organization, organizations such as the African Development Bank. That organization should pull together and as one come up with a plan that would prevent future closings and would allow the nations of the world to open and to regain their prosperity. I believe the science has proven that border closing and attempts to limit spread of the virus like Omicron is impossible and doesn't work. And so we must come up with a plan that does work and that all the nations agree to participate in. And finally, we must help our brothers and our sisters across the waters to have an adequate supply of the vaccinations. For example, all of Africa in the next 90 days needs to be vaccinated. Every single breathing, living person, child and adult in Africa needs to be vaccinated. And the way for that to happen is for the nations of the world to stand up and to make those vaccinations available, either by producing them and shipping them or by opening up manufacturing plants in Africa. All third world nations around the world, South America and in Africa, must have access to the vaccine, and that must occur soon. The failure to vaccinate Africa, the failure to vaccinate South America, will only lead to continued mutation and continued needless death and dying. It is important that we look at this as a world problem and not just look at it as nation to nation. No one nation has the ability to solve the problem of this pandemic. This is Dr. Terrence Baker coming to you from Doctors in the House at NABNTV. If you have suggestions, questions, comments, you may submit those at info@nabntv.com. Thank you.
NABNTV, inspiring a new generation.